Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MSP. This is Ukraine War Frontline update for the 25th of August 2023. Please pause the video if you want to see what my map indicates in terms of what the colours represent. There is the map key. Right, let's go on to the northeast sector. And if we go to this is my map. We go from Kupiansk to Svatova to Kremina. We go to the ISW, Institute for the Study of War. They say a couple of interesting things. First one concerns Sinkivka. So a Russian mill blogger claimed that Russian forces control most of Sinkivka. I've not heard this comment anywhere else. Sinkivka is a settlement that, according to Syriac maps, as identified by the red line here, the Russians are surrounding. The defensive lines of the Russians are around Sinkivka. Well, it would be therefore in the grey zone, as according to that mapper. Syriac maps hasn't updated yet in the last 24 hours that I can see, so there's no change from their mapping. But the claim is that most of Sinkivka is under Russian control. I don't know that that's true. It could be, it might not be. The Russians are certainly putting the pressure on in this northern area to try and distract from elsewhere. Right, as we come further down, there is repelled activity from both sides, apparently, all along this kind of northeastern front down to Crimea and beyond. What we are going to look at is Bilahorivka. So the ISW states that some Russian mill bloggers claimed on the 23rd, so it's 2 days ago now, that Russian forces are advancing on Bilahorivka and control the road to Horivka. Okay, this is fairly significant because although there's been lots of fighting around Bilahorivka for a very long time and the territory hasn't really changed that much, you get a bit of to and fro over here and over there, but actually the Russians have advanced a little bit. The town is flattened by all accounts, and when there are troops like Ukrainian troops in Bilahorivka, they're basically the basements of destroyed buildings. Horivka is over here to the west of Bilahorivka, and if the Russians control this road, that is really significant. It means that they've probably got across the Seversky Donetsk River here. That shows they've made advances on the Ukrainian positions, cross the river, and then control this road. I doubt that they would control it from attacking from the east, because that means they'd have to pretty much control all of Bilahorivka. This is much higher ground over here. I wonder if we can see that from some 3D. I'm not the best at this, as you can imagine, but yeah, you can see that it is high ground here going up around Bilahorivka. But yeah, it would be difficult for I think for the Russians to get to that road from the east over here. You can see that here we have sort of mountains and cliffs. There's a big sort of quarry by the looks of it there. So this is quite difficult terrain for the Russians to take, and it's why actually the Ukrainians have been able to hold on here quite successfully for a very long time. Because actually they're kind of, although it doesn't look like it from the elevation on this map, there are quite mountainous areas around here, and they're very difficult for the Russians to take. So if they have control over this road, that's really significant, but I kind of doubt they do. And they would probably have to come from the north across the river, which would be a difficult thing to do with equipment and whatnot. Okay, let's come down from there and we go to towards Bakhmut now. There is some footage that has come out from, well, I'm going to show you from Andrew Perpetua, that is being placed to the north of Bakhmut, next to this kind of tree line by Zalizhnyansky. This could be from a couple of days ago, and it does suggest that the Ukrainians are making advances in that area, or they're certainly assaulting. Interesting footage for a number of reasons. It's pretty good footage, very clear. It gets on to be really inappropriate and lots of shooting and overrunning of Russian positions and trench lines. So I won't show you that, but I will show you the beginning. Yeah, not only is there a lot of a few bits of equipment, there's also prog rock on show. Okay, so there is some, yeah, mechanized equipment, combined arms maneuvers, and obviously drone activity. The tanks are doing quite a lot of firing at the tree line, and then bizarrely here, right just at the bottom, we appear to have a Miklik. So this is a line chart. This is a demining piece of equipment that sends up a charge that then detonates. It forms a line and then detonates. I presume they're using this as an offensive weapon to attack the tree line there. I don't think you see actually where it lands, and I don't know whether that explosion is the demining the Miklik charge. I don't think it is. Not nearly long enough. So I think that's artillery landing from the Russians. So it just appears to me that they've used the Miklik as an assault weapon, which is, we have seen that before. We've seen that in Bakhmut. They've cleared like roads with Miklik line charges, and yeah, you can use it as an offensive weapon, but in an assault like that, it just seems just a little bit weird. Nonetheless, that is what is happening there. I don't know. So Andrew Pepech says, I will note the green eyeball I posted here a few days ago. Note the extreme defoliation. It seems likely Ukraine captured this position a while ago. I will likely change the map tonight. Looking for more info now. So there is no change to his map at the moment, but it could be that the Ukrainians have made some gains in this particular area. Right. Then we come a little further to the south, still north of Bakhmut, in a place called Bakhmut. We haven't visited here for some time now. The yellow line represents Deep State map, and they have some Russian gains here. However, the Russian gains are actually where Andrew Perpetua's had the line basically for the last week plus. So a week, I would have thought. So the Deep State map had the Russian defensive line back here, and that now has it further forward in line with where Andrew Perpetua has it. And so actually, I put an asterisk there because I don't think it's a gain. It's just realigning with actually what Andrew Perpetua previously had. I don't think in the last 24 hours the Russians have made a gain there. His map aligns with others now. So, or their map. Right, in Klishchivka, there's not a lot of information coming out of there. As far as sort of granular details, I think Syriac Maps is still wrong with the Russians having control of Klishchivka. I just don't think that is likely the case at all. Deep State Map has the Russian defensive lines in the northern part of Klishchivka. I still don't think that's correct. I much prefer to go with Andrew Perpetua, not because it's better for the Ukrainians, but because it makes more sense of the data. And I know he looks a lot at shelling, and he's looked at here closely. And if the Russians are still shelling these positions, it means that the Russians aren't going to be controlling Klishchivka. So I think that is a realistic interpretation of what's going on. And it would just be ridiculous for the Russians to counterattack into Klishchivka, because it's just a shooting for a barrel area. We saw the other day an attack on video of the Russians along this top line here, where it's higher ground towards the entrenchments that are here. This is the main area that you would want to control. Like, the town means very little. It's these trenches above the town, and you wouldn't want to attack that from below. That would just be really difficult. So these kind of attacks are much more sensible for the Russians to do that, except it's a very badly organized attack and they got absolutely decimated. But attacking along here is sensible. I don't think they would want to control the village really in the position that would leave them in, the Russians. So I think Andrew Perpetua's account is much more plausible. Anyway, other than that, not too much to report. If we go back to the ISW, they say about Bakhmut, a Russian mill blogger claimed that Ukrainian forces. So these Ukrainian forces made unspecified advances near Klishchivka, just where we were. So Russians claiming actually the Ukrainians have made some advances and captured Russian positions west of the settlement, but that's up on the high ground. So again, I'm not really sure what to make of that. Okay, then Avdiivka, further to the south, no real change there, just activity still progressing as we have seen it, or maybe not progressing, a stalemate. And then it's down to the southern front line. And as we come to there, I'm going to just give you a couple of general analyses. So David D says, I said that when something would happen, you would see things all along the line. It's getting there. Expect more pushes soon. Everyone is not in the fight yet. That's particularly in this southern area that we're going to look at. There is activity in Kherson. I don't know that the Ukrainians are pushing too much in the northeast, and we haven't seen like large amounts of activity in Bakhmut, although that push in Zaliznyensky could be representative of what David D is saying here. So pushing pretty much everywhere and causing the Russians to play a much bigger game of whack-a-mole. The armed forces crossed the main first line of defense of the Russians, said the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley. And a few sources are talking about that now, because that's quite a big claim for the Americans to say that, that leads one to believe that the main thrust of the counterattack, or the counteroffensive, sorry, is now taking place. If we go to the Velika Novosilka salient, you can see the difference between the beginning of the counteroffensive and now. It's not a huge amount of land that's been taken, but it has been slow and steady progress. This has, however, slowed down over the last couple of days. There are some claims about Zavitny Bazhanya. We have seen some POWs being taken there. And let's go to the right map for a start, shall we? So this is the area. As you can see from Poulet Volon's mapping here, it indicates that the Russians are actually counter-attacking back in the center of where the river is, Zavitne Bazhanye, a little bit to the west, and then over in Priyutne. Both sides are at it there, but no real gains here. With this map, you could see, well, you would be able to see trench lines, but there aren't really the defenses in this area, because the defenses of Velika Novosilka salient start further to the south of Staromonievka. So actually, they're not across those defenses yet. So here is David D saying the Russians from the direction of Zavitno Bezhanya voluntarily surrendered. Take it with a big pinch of salt, though. He's saying, I'm seeing more and more Russians give up, not one or two, but many. I would agree. I've seen quite a lot of footage over the last few weeks. Interesting that it's coming from there. It might indicate that the Russians are feeling they're under a lot of pressure. Now, here we have Ukrainians targeting Russian forces to the south of Staromonievka. Now, so what happens here, even if there aren't troops moving and lines moving on the map, there was always lots of activity, primarily artillery, HIMARS, and of course drone activity. So this is just one of many bits of footage. I could show you. This is Staromonievka, Russians being targeted, Russian forces being targeted. So this is a troop accumulation with some coming out, some trucks there, targeted by, I presume, drone spotted artillery. And that is in this position. So let's just see where it is, just out of interest. I mean, it doesn't really change anything, this, but the Russians are, so that's a truck letting out a bunch of troops in this area by that tree line, and then being hit by artillery. It's quite far south. I don't know why you would want to put troops out there. Maybe they're getting ready to, maybe they're going into some trench lines there, ready for the Ukrainians as they break through past Staromonievka, and that's the Russians getting ready there. I don't know why you put troops there rather than get them up to the front lines, but that is the position that was hit by the Ukrainians there. And we'll move on. We'll pop back into the ISW. Say another Russian mill blogger claimed that Ukrainian forces control Uruzhaini. Well, yes, but that the speed of Ukrainian advances in the area has slowed, and I think that is true. Although I wonder, with what's going on in Robotyne at the moment, or what seems to be going on, whether you might get a big push here as well. Okay, we're going to come further to the west now. So Priyutne, we had seen the Russians being squeezed here just northeast of Priyutne, as the Ukrainians have got onto the same kind of level of ground. This is slightly higher ground here than elsewhere, and getting in behind this ravine that's been mined and pinching that, but no movement over the last 24 hours that I can see. We're going to move past Drozhnyanka to Robotyne, where it all seems to be happening. Now, I talked to you about Syriac maps not having updated, so that's why there's only these light blue pins here. But there are fairly significant gains for the Ukrainians over the last 24 hours. You can see that they are very close to surrounding Novopokropivka. However, some of the claims are that they've actually taken Novopokropivka. I would take that with a pinch of salt. Getting closer to Vrbove, also getting closer to Kopani, opening up this whole salient, really, and also Novopokrovka up here. So those are the places, the names that you're going to hear quite a bit of. You might also hear Ocheretuvate. There's some main trench lines around here. There's some serious trenches, but the question is, do the Russians have enough troops to fill them? Will the Ukrainians attrit enough of those defending forces that it then becomes quicker and quicker for them to make gains? Right, let's go to this part of the front line and the sources here. So as you can see, that's what it looks like in this particular image. Robotyne, Novoprokopivka, which is this southern one just to the south of Robotyne, and so on and so forth. So an earlier post from Getty was, after the liberation of Robotyne, the Ukrainians began to gradually push the Russians back in the north of Novoprokopivka and in the direction of Kopani, closer to the defensive line. Okay, and then as we went on, well, the Ukrainian General Staff today talked about there being successes in two axes, and it's trying to work out why they kind of mention these places. So the General Staff talk in the Novodanilivka to Novoprokopivka axis, which is kind of weird why they're mentioned. I'd just say, yeah, just in the Novoprokopivka sector. And they talk about the Malatokmachka to Orechuvate, which is, a line from, there to there. So what I basically think that means is attacking around here and attacking around there. And that's how the General Staff communicate that. But in a Melitopol direction, they are anchoring at the achieved boundaries, which means that they've made progress and now that they're consolidating. However, there are other rumors that they're doing more than consolidating. So rumors that Ukraine has entered the town of Novoprokopivka immediately south of Robotyne. And then the rumors came out from the Russians that the Ukrainians claim the whole village, they claim that the Ukrainians have control over the whole village. But, people saying take caution with these kind of rumors. A commander of the armed forces did say that 3CY, I don't know quite what that means, was on the verge of a breakthrough. So the situation in Zaporizhia region, Novoprokopivka, came under control of the enemy, says a Russian mill blogger. Russian not confirmed again here by the Ukrainians, but Russian sources claim Novoprokopivka, just south of Robotyne, is under Ukrainian control. If this is true, it's a huge counteroffensive in progress, stretching from Kopani in the west to Novopokrovka in the east. Fog of war for sure, but the Russians are absolutely panicking right now, is this claim. That is to say that the front line is opened from Kopani all the way to Novopokrovka there, and you've got fierce fighting all over that sector. Right, the next claim here is lots of rumors have been running around today. The latest information is beginning to provide some clarification. This was posted 6 hours ago, and this was actually posted last night. So this claim that I'm just about to read is from yesterday afternoon, sort of mid-afternoon, probably in Ukrainian time, late afternoon, maybe early evening. On the Orikhiv segment, or basically the Robotyne front, the Ukrainians are getting closer to Tokmak. Information is being received that the second line of defense of Katsapny has been broken. So the Russian second line of defense has been broken in two sectors of the front. Fighting is underway in the villages of Novoprokopivka and Novopokrovka. The Ukrainian armed forces are getting closer to the villages of Obovy and Kopani. The Russians are trying to snap back, but they can't change the situation on the front. The Russians have had very large losses, and there's nowhere to replenish the fresh meat. It is reported that the Katsaps the Russians began evacuating the FSB department and headquarters from Tokmak. That is, they are doing badly, and they no longer believe that they will keep Tokmak. There's also firms in imagery, so a lot of fires just to the north of Tokmak in Chervonohorivka. That's how you Chervonohorivka, yeah, something like that, north of Tokmak. Yeah, so yeah, lots of activity, lots of rumors concerning that Novoprokopivka and how it might have already fallen just the day after Robotyne fell. But we've heard these about other places. Russians, some of them sort of doom posts and say, oh, it's terrible, this has been taken, and actually it's not under control, and it takes like 3 or 4 days for Ukrainians to achieve that. But if that is true, then it might talk to this kind of gaining of momentum as the Russian forces break and there aren't the minefields to stop the Ukrainians, the denseness of the minefields we saw initially, because of course that was in front of the Russians. Now the Russians be broken, they will have fewer minefields behind their original lines unless they can retreat and then set the mines there. But if the Russians have had their artillery and mine-laying vehicles be absolutely like battered by Ukrainian artillery, as we've seen the attrition over the last 2 months, 3 months really, then actually the Russians might not be able to do that, which means you will see quicker and quicker advances from the Ukrainians as the counteroffensive thrust goes on. And yeah, I think that's positive for the Ukrainians. To the north of Orikhiv, a cluster of enemy equipment is moving. Say the Russians, at least 50 units. The enemy is concentrating forces for a decisive blow. He needs to go to Verbove and then Tokmak. Jereman and other sort of Russian sources, Rogozin, saying at this minute there is a powerful attack in the Robotyne settlement. 83 units of Western armored vehicles and a huge number of personnel are moving to attack. A powerful battle has begun. We pray for the guys. Jereman says the armed forces of Ukraine are preparing for a decisive blow. The accumulation of enemy equipment near Orikhiv. Cluster of enemy equipment, at least 50 units, he says. The enemy is concentrated forces for decisive blow, so on and so forth, same kind of stuff. Some claiming it's about 100 units, up to 100 units. A Russian drone checking out that convoy that was moving. After the Ukrainian forces have won the Robotyne battle, the front line moving south and eastwards to the outskirts of Novopokrovka and Verbove. And Ukraine's defense forces have gained success on the Novodanilivka, Novopokrovka, and Malotokanachu, Tuvate fronts in Zaporizhia. Again, that's the general staff claims. Now, David D, and I talked about this earlier, talked about how some rumors there are 500 armored vehicles massed for a strike on Robotyne. That could well be true, but don't forget that 500 vehicles won't be all tanks and IFVs. For here's an infographic saying for 10 tanks or 10 IFVs or whatever they are, you've got medical vehicles, supply vehicles, reconnaissance, mechanics, headquarters, mortar teams, anti-tank teams, radars, food, cooks, ammo, fuel. So a lot of vehicles just for these 10 combat pieces of equipment. And so therefore, if you have 500 vehicles, it could be that, only 80 of them, for example, are actually combat vehicles. You get the point. So lots of discussion about that. Someone else saying here, pay attention to the Robotyne salient today. Ukraine has reportedly begun a large combined arms operation pushing towards Tokmak. This is a first major Ukrainian assault since the counteroffensive began at the end of spring. And then talk about activity not just going south through Novopokrovka, but also sort of eastwards or maybe southeast towards Verbove, also around Novopokrovka too. So the Ukrainians have apparently made some gains in the Verbove sector too. The advance of the Ukrainian military in the direction of Verbove, an advance close to the defense line, was recorded. Judging by personnel, the armed forces were not only able to gain a foothold near the defense line, but also gradually push the defenders away from the line itself and from the dugouts. Also, the armed forces of Ukraine took up positions in the south of the village of Robotyne, knocking out the Russian forces in the village of Novopokrovka, whatever, as I've already said. Right, just here, I think I've geolocated this now. So temporarily occupied Novopokrovka, the Ukrainian artillery is working. So here they're working on a Russian convoy. And that convoy is driving down this road. It's kind of like an S-bend here with some tree line, some trees, a wood there, and a sort of a long section of trees there. Anyway, that convoy gets pretty much hammered. And I've located that to here, Novopokrovka, and this is the tree line, and that's that long bit of tree line. So it's equipment coming down this road and going up there. Don't know when this was recorded, but artillery hammers that convoy, and that gets taken out. As a Russian convoy there. So, activity all over. I mean, I could show you lots of footage of things getting blown up all around here. There's plenty of Russian artillery that we can see getting hit. Grad rocket launchers as well, taken out by Ukrainian artillery. There's plenty of footage of all sorts of Russian kit getting destroyed. And this is the latest sort of Russian opinion I could find. The Russian military and bloggers expressed concern about the breakthrough opinion about the Russian bloggers expressed concern about the breakthrough of the Ukrainian defense lines in the Zaporizhia region and agree that it is a critical moment on the battlefield. The situation near Tokmak is developing very dynamically. So that's a situation in and around. In fact, I'll show you Poulet-Vallon's mapping, shall I? Because I think that might help. But that's a situation around the Tokmak sector, if we can call it, uh, the Robotyne area. So the Ukrainians are pushing all over this sector, and there could be some really significant battles going on there today. If we look at the defensive lines, the Russian defensive lines, and how that aligns with the major trenches, we can see near on the way to Verbove, the Ukrainians are going to have to push across that major trench line there. They have done so in other areas of trench line, but it's not like continuous like it is. They're going to be coming across that south of Novoprokopivka as the Russians are pushed back and pushed back. So we'll see how the Ukrainians rise to that challenge. As there have been some major bits of trench, but they haven't been as big and continuous as they're just about to come across. Okay, let's move on now to Kherson, and there are some fairly significant claims about Kherson, but they're quite vague in terms of exactly where they are. Talk about these islands near Kazachi-Lahiri, so on and so forth. Let's go to these claims. Right, the first one is Dmitry from War Translated saying several Russian sources are highlighting a dangerous situation developing on the islands of the Dnipro River, where recon companies of the Russian 205th are ordered forward without any artillery support, resulting in their destruction by Ukrainians. First messages emerged when Russian mercenary with call sign 13th published on his channel an audio message attacking the commander of the brigade. This was followed by 4 to 5 other channels confirming the information and also mentioning similar situations developing in a number of other units. Below is a chat log provided by a Russian military reported by someone from the brigade. It is unclear which specific island they are talking about, but the area seems to be somewhere near Kherson. Company commander Asimov stood up for the guys, saying that there were no drones, no artillery support. Lads are yelling from the island, requesting evacuation and fire support for cover. There's none. Our commander was dismissed. Other info came through that they also want to dismiss Sergeant and another sergeant, 2 sergeants, for the same reason. Zero supplies. Our lads were dropping chocolate bars from drones to the boys so they could eat. Something strange is happening. The Ukrainians are easily coming in, effing us up and leaving. Their mortars and artillery won't let us stick our noses out. Commands keep coming to keep moving, but the guys there are saying it's a swamp. They're not listened to. Asking the command of the Dnipro group and the general staff to pay attention to this situation, since very soon we may face Kazachi-Lahiri multiplied by 3 if the situation isn't changed. Now, what's interesting by that last bit is I'm not sure what's going on in Kazachi-Lahiri, and the Russians claim that they've pushed the Ukrainians out of there. But if he's saying, look, if we don't watch out, it's going to be this times 3, then that is possibly saying that Ukrainians really are still there, and it's bad. And if we don't do anything about wherever they're talking about there, then it's going to be that times 3. Unless that times 3 is the situation that was a problem until it was solved by the Russians. I don't know. There's just operational security, and there's just no information. I just can't see that the Russians would push out a significant Ukrainian foothold that easily, when the claims were that the foothold was good enough that they were attacking in 2 different directions from that foothold. So just don't know what's going on in that Kazachi-Lahiri area. That was also reported on here by Osint Uri. So this is quite a big big event that's taking place there. I was talking about the company commander being sent to the mental hospital as well. So not a good look for the Russians in that area. Recon battalions received the task to reach the island. First recon company goes, they're 200 and 300, so they're dead and injured. Then first company also dead and injured and captured. Second recon company, no artillery support. We are losing a company in 2 days. Company commander, so it's not a good look for the Russians there. So they are having quite a lot of trouble in the Kherson region. So then you go back to David D saying, look, you've got activity on the west of okay, it's not huge, but they're taking out some significant air defense systems and whatnot. Air defense systems getting taken in Kherson. You've got activity across the Dnipro on the western cape of Crimea, and then you've got an uptick in activity, possibly the major thrust taking place in Zaporizhia today. You know, we could be seeing activity all over the shop, so it could be a big day for the Ukrainian push today. We shall see. I'll keep you updated as I can. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully that was of some use. Please like, subscribe, and share. A massive thanks to Mark. Lots of consonants there, not enough vowels. However, he's told me how to pronounce it today, so I can say thank you to Mark Bizq from Canada, actually, with Ukrainian. So Mark and Elena, his wife, thank you for your support. Basically, I just wanted to pronounce your name correctly, or at least as correctly as I can. So thank you, Mark and Elena. I'm just going to call you Mark next time. Mark B. Thanks, Mark B. Anyway, take care, everybody. Really appreciate all your support. I'll speak to you later. Toodle pips.